Hello there and welcome to another video. Today we are going to be working on the V6453 progression, which is kind of a fancy way to resolve a dominant chord going to a tonic chord. And this can be found in Unit 5 of the Celebrate Harmony books, Level 9. What we're going to be doing is I will share my screen and work on a couple of ideas with you. Now, to outline things first, the cadential 6/4 progression, or also known as V6453, is a progression that occurs at a cadence and is used to decorate the dominant chord of a 5/1 or a dominant to tonic cadence. Now, to create this progression, it's important to follow the important steps. The 6/4 chord is the tonic chord in second inversion. This means that the bass note is the dominant note of the scale, but the chord that occurs above the bass or the lowest note is essentially the tonic chord. So for example, in the key of C major, the V64 would equal G, C, E. G is the dominant note, or the dominant part of the dominant chord in the key of C, but the other notes, C and E, are part of the tonic chord. Now this 6/4 or second inversion chord will smoothly be followed by the tonic chord or the dominant seventh chord. If I were to change my screen so you can see what I'm playing on the piano, the second inversion C major chord would be G, C, E. So the dominant note, the G, is then followed by a change where the bass note stays the same, but the other notes move. And the use of 6/4 is to outline the use of the tonic chord in second inversion, but the bass note stays the same as we move to the dominant chord. So conceptually, this makes sense. Now let's look at it visually. What I've done is moved over to page 53 of the actual textbook here. And you can see how there's a nice explanation with a couple of arrows. The first arrow outlines how in the key of C major, the G is in the bass, but the top chord is a C major triad in second inversion, and this then moves to a G major triad in root position, while the G in the bass does not change. And it is possible to do this in various inversions of the chord above the bass. Because as we know in proper voice leading, the interesting thing about voice leading is that the bass note determines the inversion of a chord, especially when writing with multiple staves, treble clef, bass clef, etc. So in this case, since the G stays the same in both chords, the lowest note of the first chord here, the first chord of the two, is G, but the other notes that spell out the chord are G, C, and E. So essentially we have a C major triad in second inversion because G is the lowest note. Then this moves over to then a G major triad because this G sustains and then the other chord changes above it. So even though there are two chord changes occurring here, there's only one bass note that remains the same. Sometimes in a 6/4-5-3 or a cadential 6/4 progression, the bass note will jump down or up an octave, but essentially the same note is being used. It's just being written either an octave above or below, but the same function occurs. You can do this in a minor key or a major key. So essentially, what is happening here is that the dominant chord is slightly prolonged, and also then there is a movement towards the tonic chord of this progression. The cadential 6/4 is used as a way to decorate the dominant chord of a 5/1 or an authentic cadence, and this is mostly useful at the end of a piece or the end of a phrase. It is very rare to use this in the middle of a phrase. Sometimes we can use this at the end of a phrase, in the middle of a piece, but the best place to use this progression is at the end of a piece of music, because there's a really nice sound that is created, which is kind of almost like a final musical statement that finishes off a piece. So I do hope that this information was helpful to help explain in a kind of a nutshell what the cadential 6/4 function is, and also how it can be applied in a major and a minor key, and also how the chords are spelled. All the best, and thank you so much for watching, and take care.